Oh, hey, everyone, this is Nick in the editing bay, and I wanted to leave a note before this show starts that I'm a doofus. I left on both audio sources inputs when in the show, but it basically means is that both Emily and our guest Betty Field sound like they're robots from the future. And I think saying that in advance of the interview will make it more entertaining instead of distracting. But this is the only episode that I know that it's happened. I'm letting you know so you don't leave an angry comment after the fact. It's we're gonna make it through this together, okay? All right, on with the show. Badly needed and long overdue. Hey, we are badly needed and long overdue, a controversial podcast about Colorado Springs. I'm your host, Nick Raven, and it's controversial because it makes sense. Over here to my virtual left here is Emily Lewis. How you doing? She's the co-host and researcher and navigator and social media person and TikToker and Snapchatter. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Every time I hear that theme, I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah.
I really want to hear that in concert.
Oh yeah. 100%. As soon as they make it a whole song, I will let you know, and you can go and see them do it.
They got to be close. They got to be close because they've got a chunk of it written there.
Yes.
So today's episode, we've got on Betty Field. Sorry, talking about living with disabilities in Colorado Springs, which is
and accessibility.
In Colorado Springs, and it's a struggle to understand as someone who is able-bodied, but to hear it from someone who has to live it day to day, and all the little nitpicks, and someone who's actually familiar with the processes needed to fix those things is
It's definitely
refreshing.
it definitely is guaranteed to be an interesting and educational
Yeah.
guest. And honestly, as able-bodied people, we really do need to start paying closer attention to how we live within spaces that we share with other people who may not be as able-bodied,
Right.
as to whatever degree we are.
Yeah. And the more that we're able to understand that, acknowledge that, and figure that out as individuals, the more likely we are to enact change as a body, as a city, as a county, as a state, as a nation, to be able to fix that. So it's definitely a perspective issue. So so with all that said, hey, let's talk to Betty Field about disability and accessibility in Colorado Springs. Let's do it. Betty, welcome to our little podcast that we got going on here.
Hello.
Ooh, thank you very much. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you on the show. Great to have you on. And I've known you for a while virtually. We met at Stephanie V Hill's kickoff event a couple of months ago. It was like, oh, I finally met Betty Field. So what I'd love to hear, we'll kick it off, but just tell us your entire life story. We've got a couple years that you can just list every single detail, but how you got to the Springs, are you native, and your story kind of to date?
Okay. No, I'm not originally from the Springs. I grew up in a tiny little town in North Dakota, and then spent the 22 years of my married and raising children part of my life in South Dakota, and moved to Colorado Springs 10 years ago now with my boyfriend. and fell in love with the area immediately. In 2017, I ran for Colorado's 5th congressional district and missed getting on the primary ballot by a few votes, but that was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And I am still very, very grateful for the lessons that I learned and, through that experience, and, just really getting to love this area even more because of that. And then in September of 2019, it was Labor Day weekend. It had a great weekend, and was filling in for somebody at work for a few hours. So I was up at 7:30 in the morning or so getting ready for work, and got just a really strange pain in my back. And I thought, well, I pulled something or whatever. And so I figured I'll just sit down for a little bit, watch the news, had a cup of coffee, and that was at about 7:30. And by 8 o'clock in the morning, I was paralyzed from the waist down. My spinal cord is T10, 11, and 12, which is right at about belly button level. After, a lot of testing and all that kind of stuff, I was diagnosed with a neuroimmune disease called transverse myelitis. And that's basically where your immune system attacks your spinal cord. At that point, that diagnosis, I could move nothing from the waist down, couldn't feel anything from the waist down. We're getting close to 3 years out now from onset, and I'm very fortunate that I can stand. I can do what they refer to as a stand pivot. So I can stand up, kind of turn around to sit down on my bed or bathroom, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But walking any more than a few steps, I still can't do. I am permanently in a wheelchair. And that has brought with it a lot of new lessons and new experiences that, although I didn't sign up for,
No.
did not sign up for, the good, it still has outweighed the bad, and the some of the bad are things that we can change, that can be fixed. So that's kind of been my motivator now. I live in low-income housing where there are lots of people just like me here. And the systems that we have in place to help people that are disabled are so convoluted. I swear they're set up to force people to quit. So I've done a lot of work with, neighbors and others who are trying to maneuver not just being disabled, but also maneuver a system that is really not designed to help.
Right. Bear with me 1 second. I need to hit my AC because I just stupid thing. Be right back.
Oh. Now, so is that a new setup that you're in now? Your little chair?
Yes. Yeah.
I thought it was.
Yeah. And it's not, my insurance would not cover a new chair for me for another 2 years.
Yeah.
So I had to purchase this myself secondhand. But my other chair is called Power Assist, so I still have to roll it myself. And it was messing up my cervical spine and my shoulder.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about it because I know that's something that can absolutely, become an issue.
Oh yeah,
is the the upper body, the longer that you have to power yourself forward.
Yep.
Yeah. So how has it been getting used to basically an entire lifestyle change as a result of this thing that you didn't have any control over it? And I remember when it happened too. It was like, oh my God, like life upside down, it seemed.
It very much so. And what's been really hard is, it was September 2nd, 2019. I was in the hospital for about a month. And then, out of the hospital, trying to, figure out what all this means. Got my first apartment in March of 2020.
So about 6 months there.
In March of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I was in my apartment 3 days and the whole world shut down for COVID. So I did really well that first year, really go anywhere. Nobody did. But just, it was really hard accepting the fact that I needed help with things that I wasn't used to needing help with. It started out, I had to have a CNA come over to help me shower. And, it was just, you can't help, but I couldn't help but to go through some pretty dark depression.
Yep.
Everything I believed to be true about myself, I questioned now. And, that was really hard. And I felt like I had no purpose. I felt like my voice no longer mattered. It was really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Very hard.
Now, before all of this happened, before you even ran for CD5, because that's primarily how I was introduced to you, was you again and Stephanie Rose there. But before that, what was your job? What was your career? What were you doing? What was your lifestyle like?
I was primarily working in the social work field. I worked with youth and families of at-risk youth, and in South Dakota, worked with the Juvenile Department of Corrections, helping kids who are coming out of DOC placements and things to normalize back into the public school systems and things like that. So, I worked with at-risk youth in conjunction with schools and the police departments and all of that. My title was Youth and Family Crisis Intervention Specialist. So dealing with kids in crisis is basically,
Mm-hmm.
that was my...
And so what brought you to Colorado Springs?
Well, when I met Michael, my boyfriend, in South Dakota, that's where I was living, and that's where he was living at the time, going to school. And when he decided that he was ready to come back to Colorado Springs, I came with him. So that's how I...
What did you think of the town when you got here? I don't know if you've been politically left-leaning since youth, or did you have a journey across the spectrum at all? But what was it like moving to such a conservative city?
Well, growing up, so prior to graduating high school, I went to a private Catholic school, very traditional, strict Catholic upbringing. When I started college, I started questioning, some of the things that I had been taught and just automatically assumed to be true. And when I realized that those things weren't necessarily true,
right,
and learned more to think for myself, is when I became a lot more politically active. And, so even before, being married and that kind of thing, I became more politically active and definitely left-leaning. But now I know Colorado Springs is very conservative in, the aspect of looking at Colorado. But you got to remember, I grew up in North Dakota.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So there's degrees of conservatism.
Exactly. But, you can still feel that very conservative undertow here in just what this city and this area prioritizes. What do they value? And regardless of where you are, if you're in a conservative area, that undertow is the same. Some places louder, some places it's a little more hidden, but it's there. And it's
exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm blanking here. What year did you move up here?
Oh gosh.
Or I guess down here from North Dakota.
2011.
Okay. Okay. That's just before I moved to Arizona and then back in there. So had you been involved politically at all before your CD5 run?
Some, yes. Never in such a out front way as to run for office,
Mm-hmm.
but volunteered on for Hillary's campaign, volunteered for Obama's campaign when I was still in his first run in South Dakota. Worked on campaigns for local candidates and things like that.
Right.
I was the executive director for a while at the LGBTQIA Center in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Okay.
And while that's directly a political position, it is very much influenced by politics.
Yes.
So it was the time of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Mm-hmm.
That was very political at the time as well. So, it's just, people say I don't do politics. And I say, well, if you don't do politics, politics will do you.
Yes.
That whole I don't do politics, that's such a privileged place to come from. I'm super glad that you don't have to worry about what is happening in politics, because none of it's going to affect you.
Right.
But
yeah, rest of us. Yeah, exactly.
So when you got down, so you got here 2011 and then you ran in 2017 basically, because you have to start like 2 years out on a big race like that. So what inspired you after? I assume maybe Trump was involved, but what was the catalyst for like, Betty, you gotta run, you gotta go, and we gotta take out that Lamborn guy? And I know that we all follow his newsletter every single week.
Yeah, I've got a headache. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah. Welcome.
Well, at that point, when I moved to Colorado, a lot of people were like, are you going to apply, get back into social work type work? And I was like, yeah, I want to do something that's maybe not quite so stressful. Mm-hmm. So I took a job started as the receptionist at the Pikes Peak Association of Realtors. You want to talk about conservative? Okay. And then after being there for a little over a year, I was promoted to their lockbox supervisor, whatever. Well, Lamborn was doing an event with the Chamber of Commerce, and tickets were hell of expensive, but had a friend that bought a whole table for dissenters to show up. Mm-hmm. And at the table with Doug Lamborn was the CEO of the Pikes Peak Association of Realtors. The board of directors were there and whatever. And there I am at the back of the room with all the noisemakers, right? I didn't get in trouble. The group that I was with, nobody was escorted out. They, we behaved like adults, right? Mm-hmm. Well, after the event, there were a bunch of people protesting outside. And, the news media was sort of covering the people protesting outside, but you know what I mean. So they interviewed me as to why these people were protesting outside. When the board of directors and that saw that I had done that interview, mm-hmm. I went from scoring a 98 out of 100 on my performance evaluation 2 months earlier, to being fired.
Yep.
There's a little political discrimination there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no discrimination against political beliefs, like, they're to the extent, right? Like when people post just the worst stuff, but that's not a very good reason to fire you for a difference of opinion like that.
And after that happened, and I got real involved with a lot of the protests and things that were happening locally. I went to the first Women's March in DC. I've been to 3 of the ones in DC. I had the honor of traveling to one of them with Emily.
Yeah, we went to the 2021.
Yep.
And that was actually when, because Betty was still very newly in her chair, mm-hmm. and navigating DC was an adventure.
Yeah, well,
it was an adventure. And of course we lost Betty like several times as she wandered off to talk to other wheelchair people.
You're still networking. Nothing's gonna stop you there.
Yeah, we're looking around. Where'd Betty go? And we'll look for the wheelchair. Okay, that's not helpful. No.
Raise your hand. Keep your hand in the air.
Yeah, exactly.
Where can you shake it a little?
Yeah, so that's that was actually when Betty and I first met in person as well. Mm-hmm. Well, we had met at your event, and then mm-hmm. But the Women's March was amazing, and also again, because it was the last thing we did before COVID hit, and so we didn't get to go for the 21 one.
Yeah,
because first and foremost COVID, and also because these people were fucking crazy.
No kidding. Yeah. But Nick, to kind of answer your question, it was all of the power behind like the women's movement and the all of that, and the fact that every time either myself or others would try to get Doug Lamborn to host an in-person or answer a question or whatever, he wouldn't. And one lady that I lovingly refer to as my Colorado mom, her name is Ara. Her and her mother took me out for lunch one day, and she said to me, "Betty, I think you should run." And I'm not kidding. I'm not saying this to be cute. I immediately looked over my shoulder, and I was like, "Wow,
run where?
What's happening?" And no, I really think you should run against Lamborn. And I laughed. I thought that was funny. But I started talking to other people about it, thinking about it more. And I thought, beating Lamborn is more than a long shot. But
yeah,
we have got to have voice. And so that's what drove me to run.
Yeah, especially here in this district, which has been, even though it's shrunk down with the redrawings here, it's still a long shot.
Yes.
It's very difficult.
Yep.
And I know it was a long primary and all that. Would you consider running again?
I would absolutely consider running for public office again. I'm not sure if I would, take such a big bite. Sometimes ignorance truly is bliss. Yeah, I think I would consider doing something more local.
Okay.
So many local issues that need to be addressed, especially looking at it from the disabled residents of Colorado. Yep. And Colorado in general. That's something that I may consider at some point, but I don't think I would do a national campaign again.
Yeah, I'm sure you learned quite a bit from that, because that is, the biggest office that, I don't know, like between that and like mayorship, those seem like the two biggest ones that you can run for here today.
Yeah.
That seems like a lot. So.
Yeah.
So let's talk about in the year since everything happened there. We'll start with the positive here, because I know that we can take a look at the opportunities in that as a way forward. But what have been some of the positives that have come out of these past few years, and things that you've learned or advocated for, etc.?
One of the things that even today is just, most people really do want to help. if I'm out, at a restaurant or whatever, people are more than willing to move or whatever so that I can get through. And so just, the kindness that it still remains in humanity has been kind of a nice surprise given everything else that's going on. So that's been a real positive. And another real positive is the fact that I was forcibly taught humility. I'm gonna talk real, okay?
So,
When you're from the belly down, nothing from the belly button down works correctly. Nothing. Okay. So, there would be times where, at 50 some years old, I would have bladder accidents.
Yep.
Bowel accidents. I'd have to ask people for help. I mean, that is the most humiliating experience as a grown adult, is to have those kinds of issues. And again, the kindness that I was always shown helped me to learn to be more humble, and to learn that humility is not weak. And that, I think, is the most important lesson that I've learned. When I was campaigning, or even in South Dakota doing the social work stuff, there is a sense of strength that comes from those kinds of positions. It's very hard to feel strong when you can't control your key.
Yeah.
Yep.
So learning that I can still be strong in other ways, and that being does not mean being weak. And that took me a very long time, and I still struggle with it. But, there are so many people that live quiet lives of disability. I'm also very fortunate that my disability is visual. You can see that I have a disability.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Lucky. I'm lucky in that. People that have disabilities that can't be seen so readily with the naked eye.
Yeah.
For them to maneuver everyday living is much harder. Much, much, much harder. I'll have somebody hold the door for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Somebody that's having a panic attack, or, has a mental health issue that is disabling, they get all the negative labels and all of that. For me, there's kindness. For them, there's cruelty and judgment.
Yep.
And that's sad. That it's wrong. And I was forced to learn those lessons. Those aren't lessons that, you really truly learn until you have to.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of learning that humility, I think, has made me a better person. And a stronger person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you've had to figure out your entire life in an entirely different way, and it is tempting as an able-bodied person to to be like, let me help you, let me get, especially as a codependent person, like, let me lay down everything that I am, let me lay down what I'm doing so that I can help you out. And I know that there's a sense of like, no, hang on, I may have disabilities, I may be disabled, and it's like, you don't have to stop being you and lay down everything.
Yeah.
Because I got this,
I gotta, when we were in DC, okay, yeah.
Okay.
The day of the march, right? I'm scared. I'm terrified. Okay. And then nobody wants to admit that they're terrified, right? So you convolute it with a whole bunch of other stuff. So I actually came out and said, I'm not going. And who is known for, just being quiet and in the background.
Yes.
No.
The hell you ain't going. We're all here because you want to go. We're going. I have got amazing friends like that don't let me do that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me, cover in my fear and let life pass by. And I've got friends that let me at least try at first. And when that night we were making seafood, oh my God, that was so good.
Yes.
And I was in the way. And Laura, another lady that was with us, she looked at me, she's like, Betty, could you just roll somewhere?
Just roll away. Just go out of the way.
Can you make like a burrito and just wrap it up like it's
And I love that because I'm not all of a sudden made out of glass. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times people in their kindness, I try to accept their kindness as it's coming from a good place. They don't mean to be condescending, but it can get that way. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah. Many times where, Betty's sitting there and we're sitting around and Betty's like, can someone no, you can go get it. We're walking around DC and we're all like, okay, Betty, you got to get out and walk. Somebody else needs a chair now for a while. Yeah, no, we're done here. You just got to go.
Sorry. You were busy touching all of the things. I will never forget you in front of the, which one was it?
All of them.
I don't know. But she was like right up next to the building and the security guards going,
well, that wasn't the one that was across the street from the Smithsonian Park that we stopped at.
Yeah.
I can't remember what that. It's like an important building. I can't remember which one it was though.
The bin.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
There are so many important I've been to Washington once, but kind of like through it. And it's like every 15 steps. It's like, here's a thing that is so vital to the operation of this country.
The security guard was afraid that maybe I had a bomb or something because, I'm like, I want to be in this building, in this space. And he's like watching me with this very suspicious side eye. And I'm like, I'm just touching the building. I just want to touch the things.
Of Emily on that trip touching things.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I touched all the things.
A serial toucher. Okay.
In May, the middle of end part of May, I lost my mom.
Yeah, and I know. I saw that.
And thankfully, my sister and I were there almost 2 weeks, before she had passed. And I had a friend that traveled with me to North Dakota, but she couldn't stay as long as I wanted to stay. So after the funeral and everything, I flew back by myself.
Look at you.
Oh.
And I was in that power assist chair, not, take big things on an airplane, really.
Yeah.
So I get off the airplane all by myself because I was like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And I had a checked bag. I managed the train thing, everything, got over to the luggage claim, got my suitcase off of the carousel by myself. So here's me rolling through DIA, pushing my suitcase and then rolling to catch up with it. And rolling. And, people were stopping me every 10 feet. Do you need some help? I'm like, nope. Myself. And I did. Yeah. And that was like the best. I did it myself.
Yep.
I'm sure I looked just ridiculous, but I ever worried about that. So
right.
So
it's just getting out there and playing,
Are there have there been positive experiences as far as like getting housing or just as far as what the Colorado Springs is doing? Yeah, I know. Has there been something positive the city's been doing to try and help you out, listen to you?
Buckle up, Nick. Buckle
Yeah.
up.
No, that's fine. We're getting there. I'm waiting for it.
Well, no.
Cool. Okay.
No. I started the process of, getting my long-term Medicaid stuff set up and all of that. And Nick, there's actually an article about it in the Indy. If you want to go back. Away. They lost my paperwork, and I was living in a hotel for a while, and then an Airbnb for a while, waiting for them to get, their together. Can I swear?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was like, oops. To get their and really the only way that I got DHS to get back on the ball with that was the media coverage. It shouldn't be that way.
This is all federal, or was it?
No, that's El Paso County.
Yep.
Okay.
Human Services.
Right.
Yeah. And that was just getting things so that I could have a CNA, so that I could get the in-home care that I needed.
For your ADLs and that.
Yeah, I didn't have anybody for 3 months because they lost my paperwork. That was awful. You want to talk about feeling less than human? It was awful. Once I got that set up and to an apartment, it got better. Of course, I had to navigate the Social Security Administration, trying to get disability. There too, I got very fortunate. Most people, you try at least 3 times before you finally get it. You're denied. Thankfully, I had great doctors that knew how to fill out the paperwork.
Yep.
And guys, usually what the problem is, paperwork isn't filled out correctly.
Because you usually have to send to your notes to your doctor like 2 or 3 times. They're like, "Hey doc, I need this thing." They keep asking for, and then you get the assistant, and they're like, "Oh, the doctor will get to it," and blah blah blah. I've been through that pipeline.
Yep.
Yeah.
It takes, but my medical providers were great. They got it done. So I was actually approved on my first time applicant, which never happens. So that was great. But I moved into an apartment where my rent was $750 plus all utilities, and I was making $961 a month. So that was fun. Good time.
Fun. Yeah.
Yep.
And then I got on lists and whatnot to get into the subsidized housing, which is what I'm in, or Section 8 or whatever. And we all know what a disaster Section 8 is.
Yes.
One of my neighbors was like number 2 and then had to start over in July. And now she's at 1,600 again.
Oh,
So,
God.
Yeah, start over. And so I really didn't know what I was going to do. I was actually planning moving back to North Dakota because I could get into housing immediately there. I didn't want to do that. I mean, my life is here.
Yeah.
But I needed to be able to have sustainable housing. When I was notified that I'd be able to move in where I am now. And even here, we have one door coming in and out of this building that's handicap accessible. One. We've had 2 serious power outages in the year that I've lived here. Those doors don't work when the power is out.
Oh, God.
So I have what they claim to be an ADA approved apartment, and it is much easier for me to maneuver. I'm very grateful to be living here. But there's a difference between what is truly accessible and what, your paperwork says is accessible. When somebody says, well, it's an accessible venue, I'm accessible for whom?
Right, because ADA, usually there's a checklist of things that you can do, and I know there have been other standards that have tried to come along, and it's like, well, what's the experience like? Instead of, does it have X, Y, and Z, it's kind of, well, do X, Y, and Z make sense in concert? I can't recall what those credentials were, but...
Well, And Emily, when we were going to, we were at DIA and I went in to use the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Yes.
The hand, grips in the handicap stall, they had the little feminine hygiene product trash receptacle.
Mm-hmm.
The handrail, you couldn't hold on.
Yep.
It met the requirements. The handrail was there, it just you couldn't use it.
Yep.
And that those are the things that you run into all the time. DHS, the office that does like the food stamps, Medicaid, and that kind of thing up on Garden of the Gods.
Mm-hmm.
Right, at the Civil Service Center.
Yeah.
They moved that particular office. It's still in the building, but they moved it to a new portion of the building.
Uh-huh.
So I was going in there and they didn't have handicap accessible doors. And I thought, this is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So I made a couple of phone calls and whatnot, but before all that, I made the mistake of putting it on Facebook. Like, what the hell? How do they not have doors? And I got, I had several friends going, okay, we're going to meet up there. We're going to, I was like, okay, I guess we're doing a protest. It's actually a story. When we got up there to do the protest, the guy who oversees the buildings and all of that kind of thing met us there. And another gentleman that works for the city. And we had a great conversation. They kept me in the loop. And they said, yes, we know that needs to be done. It'll be done by such and such a date. They kept me in the loop as to how the progress was going. And when it was installed and ready for use, I went back up there and talked to them again. And honestly, that's all. Sometimes with that situation, they knew they needed those doors and they knew they were moving and they should have been done before they opened the business, right?
Right.
But there are instances where you don't know until you know, right? Yeah. And so if you let somebody know, hey, this doesn't work, whatever, most places want to be accessible because most of those places I'm coming to spend my money, right? Mm-hmm. But there you get the eye rolls, you get the, why should I have to when I have one or two wheelchair use customers
a month?
Yeah. Whatever. And so there is still a whole lot of hesitancy. And I've experienced even some, like, just go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was, the most frustrating thing for me, and again, I'm sure, I can't think of a specific instance, but I'm sure I'm guilty of this. We have those awesome scooters now.
Yes. Yeah, the limes. We talked about that in a previous episode, actually.
Them on the sidewalk, please. You have just made my access impossible.
Mm-hmm. Part of the issue with that is the way that they've been set up within the city itself. There's if you're on the road and not on like a sidewalk adjacent area, they don't work, or because they want them to be used not in the streets. Now, if there's a bike lane, then you're fine in a bike lane. But as well as I do,
and unfortunately it's terrifying. And we were even talking about with Cully and Jax about bicycling, but just the half-assed bicycling infrastructure that we have in town means that if you're not on the sidewalk, you are running within 10, 15 feet of cars zooming past at 40 miles per hour, especially on Nevada, which is technically a highway. But that said, we're on the same page. It would be great if we could take the scooters out into the street and give the sidewalks back to the people who actually need them to get around,
I don't mind if they're riding on the sidewalk. I've not run into a problem with that for me personally, but don't stop and park them in the middle of the sidewalk and leave them
Well,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. There are places that you're supposed to park them off of,
Out of
the
the way.
sidewalk
It says
areas.
in the app, like, yo, don't keep this in the way where people are going to run
Yeah,
into
don't
them.
leave it in the middle of the sidewalk.
And you're supposed to take a picture when you're done, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that.
But we all know how,
Well,
Oh yeah,
yeah, no.
they
we
wind
know.
up in the middle of the sidewalks.
I live real close to the McDonald's here on Washington, and I like their iced coffee. Roll down there, and it's not a problem, but inevitably somebody has parked their bicycle right in front of, by the door, where if I were walking, I could get by it, no problem, but I cannot in a chair.
Yeah.
So there is none of that is malicious. I don't know if I would have thought about it.
Yep.
Prior to being in a chair.
Oh yeah.
And, the whole saying of nothing about us without us.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cute little slogan, but it's incredibly important.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, because I can't expect somebody who's never experienced this to know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still learning.
You don't know until you know.
That's right. Exactly. And those kinds of efforts that I have found, when I make comment or whatever, there's the most resistance to that kind of. Now, if you're talking to a business owner and it's an ADA issue, they kind of get it. We have to fix that.
Yeah.
And it's just living day-to-day life. That's why I said if I were a tourist, I wouldn't have any trouble ever because hotels do the best they can, restaurants, yada, yada. But, for me to get downtown, the sidewalks are terrible. Like I said, stuck trying to get home today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's those types of things that make living just a simple life very hard.
Yep.
And we have the COS app, to report that stuff. But unfortunately, a lot of that is, we already know it's a problem. So, it's on our long list of things to do. So, I realize that you need that to get to Safeway or King Soopers or just to do what you need to do for life. But, there's kind of it's kind of just broadly a lack of political will there too.
Yes.
And at the numbers, people with disabilities, it's like 1 in 5 people in Colorado have it. So again, it's another minority. And as we all know, meeting the very real needs of minorities in our community is not a priority.
No.
And, a politician can say otherwise, but not when you live it every day. You can talk, but let me tell you about your values because I have to live with them.
Yeah. Well, exactly. We really need some more voices within the community at a I don't want to say non-citizen level, but you know what I mean with that. It's we need people who are front and center, who have these disabilities and who have these mobility issues to be there saying, okay, no, we don't need this money to go here. We need this money to go here to these accessibility things.
Yeah.
And Emily, so much to that point, it's the money is almost second. I'm going to tell you about what happened when I went to a city council meeting. When I say, you don't have to tell me about your values, I live them. Yeah. I was speak at this meeting. That microphone was not accessible. That podium, ridiculous.
Was this after the before or after their restoration that they just did? I don't think it's better, but
it's not better.
Before. But I said to them, I said, this isn't okay. Do you really think I feel like you have any interest in what I have to say?
Right.
get to the venue here.
Yep.
And so, that's what I'm talking about. You don't have to tell me what you value. I can tell you just how welcoming and inclusive and all of that you're making the process.
Yeah.
Whether it's city council, whether it be DHS, whether it's, a business, you can tell. And that I was really pissed off.
Understandably.
Yeah.
Especially at city council.
Yeah. Well,
and so they handed the microphone and left me sitting behind the podium. So they didn't have. And then I said, I kind of scared everybody. I pushed myself up the stand. I said, does it scare you now?
Yep.
Because,
well, and you would think with the, and it's not even, I don't want to compare the issues with aging, but with the median age of the residents of Colorado Springs, you would think that accessibility would be so high on people's radar, and to see that it's not, because people come here to retire.
Yes.
And I'm creeping up on 50 here, and there's already some things I'm like, I'm a little uncomfortable with this just in general. I think that accessibility should be so much higher.
That is such an excellent point, Emily, because all of us, we don't, have transverse myelitis to have to deal with disability in some form as we age.
Yeah.
And we want people to stay engaged in their community and, enjoying their homes and their community. And, it's not if you can't maneuver.
Yeah.
Right.
If you can't get places, if you can't get into a place that to spend your money or to get something to eat or pay a bill or whatever. And I know it's and again, especially being downtown.
Yeah.
Nick and I spend a huge amount of time wandering downtown
around the place,
here,
exploring the place. Yeah.
I'm up and down. What is that, Weber right there?
Yeah.
To go to McDonald's or the 7-Eleven or whatever else, and walking it is one thing. I've gone down them on the scooters, and there's places right now that I have to stop the scooter so I can walk it across this weird, whatever place in the sidewalk, because otherwise I'm going to fall over somewhere and bleed out in the street. And it's again, and with your building being right there, I've never understood why that little section, at least, of downtown was not more accessible, why it wasn't, why it's not being kept up better than what it is. Because I know even the sidewalk going up Kiowa is garbage.
Oh, it's terrible. And it's one thing that it's bumpy and it's whatever, but for me, and again, I'm going to keep talking about our trip to DC. I know you remember this too. The bumpiness of the sidewalks or the pavement and stuff like that, for me, that causes such intense pain.
Sure.
Yep.
It's just annoying that the sidewalk is tore up. No, it causes extreme pain.
Because
So
you're the shock absorber at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
and
my
nerves, my legs are all messed up. And I got a tattoo on my leg this morning and hardly felt it.
Oh.
At the same time, there are days where my pants hurt. Okay. So there is no, it's always one thing.
Yep.
So accessibility has to be more than, can you get through the door? Or is it actually passable? Well, yeah, it's passable, but
at what cost?
Exactly.
Now,
So that's what, when somebody says it's accessible, I'm like, to whom? Who
yeah.
is it?
Now you had an experience with DHS, like trying to figure out the switch to get the doors open and stuff. But are there other people in town, especially within the government, that have really been like, let's listen to Betty, let's get your feedback and stuff like that? Someone else I'd ask about is Yolanda. Avila, have you
Yeah.
been able to talk with her, have a work, because obviously she has to deal with the obviously it's not a one for one thing, but an overlapping
Yeah.
amount of issues.
I have not yet.
Okay.
I am forming some relationship with the Independence Center and their advocacy work. Peer ad. You guys help me out here. Advocacy.
Advocacy,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I always struggle over that one myself.
So I'm getting there, but you know, I feel almost like that 2020 and in large part 2021 was lost for me because I wasn't able to get out and, define this new that I have. Honestly, this last year has been the start of big of work for me. So I'm looking forward at, becoming more involved. I am absolutely not afraid of shining light on the ugly, but more important than that, I really, really want to be part of the solution and not just pointing out the problems. So, that's why I want to become more involved. It's one thing to just go, oh, look over there. The house is on fire.
Yeah.
No, bring a bucket. Okay.
Yeah.
I will bring a bucket to the conversation.
It doesn't seem like it would be appropriate if Betty Fields sat on the sidelines of the things that she's passionate about that affects her every single day.
Well, and I'm gonna, and Emily, I apologize. I'm probably gonna cry.
Okay.
It's okay.
When I was sharing about learning humility and learning that there's strength in humility, part of the hard process for me was realizing that I could still contribute, but I had to figure out how. I had to find a new way of defining what purpose is for me now. And that has been harder to learn than any of the physical therapy, any of the, maneuvering a new wheelchair, any of that. And so, as we come in contact with people who are disabled, whatever that disability is, there's no point when you can say, okay, I'm done, I'm adjusted now. That doesn't happen. It's a forever thing. And through the help of a really great therapist, everybody should see a therapist. I'm just putting that out there.
Oh, 100%.
We agree. We agree.
I accepted the fact that I had the right to grieve. And grieving the life that I wanted, the life that I was loving, and that losing my mom was horrible grief.
Yes.
But dealing with losing my life was worse.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it well. I didn't do it well. So now that I'm feeling more stable, I have a living situation that I can actually maneuver in. It's not perfect. We're working on it. Yeah. I do want to get more involved again and get back at, like you said, Nick, doing things that I'm passionate about.
Right.
And lending my voice in areas that I hope I can help.
Yep.
Are there efforts, are there people, are there groups that you'd like to shine a spotlight on that are really, that you're working with or you want to work with to advance the assistance for people with disabilities and the disabled.
Absolutely. Obviously, the Independence Center, they do great work. I've got some ideas on maybe some needs that possibly aren't being met that maybe I can help volunteer with. The Resource Exchange does phenomenal work in helping people like myself make connections with the services that they need. So that was really instrumental in my leading as independent life as I possibly can. And then places like the Chinook Center. I love the center. Right before I got back and whatever, the Chinook Center, I helped organize here at my building the groceries for the people. We have between 20 and 30 bags of groceries delivered here every week.
Yeah.
For the neighbors here. And it's like the Chinook Center, in everything they do, acknowledges that not everybody does those things the same.
Exactly.
And I don't expect to have access to everything that's life, but it's nice to not be forgotten. The Chinook Center is phenomenal at that. So 3 of my favorite.
Yeah, we actually had the John at the Chinook Center was actually our guest yesterday.
Yeah. So you guys are like a week apart in time.
Yeah.
Well, Betty, I want to thank you so much for being able to come on here on a Sunday afternoon and chat with us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And to hear your story and how you've had to go through it. It's great to hear. I've had to a kind of a personal story, but I've had to see some of that struggles from the other side of having to be an advocate. So to see you going strong, and I really excited to see where you go forward too.
Can I say one more thing?
Of course.
But you don't like, you can always edit it out.
Oh, that's fine. We don't edit out anything.
Things that I was real important to me is people will see me, and I've had people even make this comment to me, that they were having a bad day or were sick or whatever, and they go, "Oh, but look at Betty, she's doing." No, thank you, please. It's not a competition, and I don't want to win. I do not want to win this one. Everybody has struggles. Everybody has pain. Everybody has heartache. There's no competition here. Your pain, your experience, your struggle matters. Don't put it on a scale of, yes, but somebody has it worse or this. No. Right. Experience is just as important as anybody else's.
Yep, they're 100% valid.
I was never familiar with the term inspiration porn until that's not a comfortable place, and it devalues somebody else's experience. So, your experience matters, it's valid, and it deserves to be heard and respected.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. Betty, thank you so much for being with us today.
You guys, thank you. And I apologize for running a little bit late, but everything you guys do. And now that, y'all are rolling around through my area, stop by sometime. I'm usually out in the park having a cigarette.
Yeah. Okay. And not starting any fires, of course.
No.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Thank you, Betty.
Thank you. Thanks. We'll talk soon.
Well, that was a great interview. Thank you so much to Betty for being able to drop in. I know there was like she mentioned, there was a little bit of a struggle with her just trying to get up the street back to where she lived to come and podcast with us. But it was really awesome to hear. And yeah, there was a point. Yeah, I actually got really emotional and just is I don't apologize for it at all. It's just, you know, you don't want to see people have to struggle with something they shouldn't have to struggle with. So.
Exactly. And you know, talking about the as much as we love the scooters,
yes,
and the you know, the privilege of just leaving them laying around, which you shouldn't do.
You shouldn't do anyway.
Regardless.
Put them in the grass or whatever. Like it's like I said, it literally says in the app, don't put the crap in the middle of the street or the sidewalk.
Yeah, don't leave it just sitting there.
Yeah, don't be a jerk. Be considerate. I mean, think what you will of the people zooming around on limes on the places that say dismount, which has definitely been me. But yeah, be more considerate about that. And there are so many different other small things that you may not even be considering, and that's just, it's going to be a culture change and something we have to figure out.
Exactly.
So. All right, Emily, you want to get us out of here?
100%. Badly Needed and Long Overdue is a podcast about shaking things up in the conservative city. This show was hosted by Nick Raven and Emily Lewis. It's me. You can watch the video version of this show on YouTube and listen to us in podcast form wherever you find podcasts. Our theme music is by the Knockblockers. They're a local ska band, very awesome. Highly recommend you go find them on social media. You can reach us on a whole bunch of different social media platforms as well, like on Instagram, Badly Needed Podcast, on Twitter at Badly Needed COS, on Facebook, Badly Needed and Long Overdue Podcast, and on TikTok at Badly Needed Podcast. We do not actually have any TikTok content yet. We're working on it. Leave a comment or something and tell us what you would like to see on our TikTok. What do you think our TikTok should be about?
Everything at all of us. We're Badly Needed and Long Overdue, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.